You're plugged in to The Real Life Show with your host, Malachi Malay.
And co-host, Catherine Martins.
Where real life issues meet real life solutions. Problems are not solitary things. Someone has been through what you're going through. So let's talk about real life.
Yeah, Malachi, baby. Representing our city, aka Rail City. Come on. I love my city, I grab the mic when I speak cause I rep my city. I'm down for the long run cause I bleed my city. It's about time you respect my city. This is Malachi Malay and
Tamara Spears, the healthy vegan.
The healthy vegan. So Tamara, you have a very like roller coaster life, you know. So I want to start back from when you were about 3 years old. What exactly happened at 3?
Well, I didn't actually remember my childhood at all until a couple years ago. I had a breakdown, and that was the beginning of integrating my history, my memories. I've come to understand a little bit more about mental illness through this, but I did start to remember when I was 3 what happened then, and that was my first sexual assault experience.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Do you roughly remember exactly?
Yeah, what happened when I had what I thought was my breakdown was that these memories started to resurface. Mm-hmm. The personality, the alter persona that I had fractured into to handle those specific memories had been buried under yet another persona within another trauma that had happened. So this was a repeating cycle in my life. So as I uncovered things a couple of years ago, I got down to what had happened when I was a kid, where it all started. Mm-hmm. And those memories at first had started to surface as the alter coming out. That's when I first knew that I had one, and that I needed to do something about it. I was taking care of my kids, and I had switched into my alter state, a 3-year-old girl. Mm-hmm. And that alter used to experience the traumas from outside of the body.
Okay.
So she used to witness the trauma happening to 3-year-old me.
Okay.
And 3-year-old me was hidden somewhere dark inside of my mind. My core persona was like protected inside.
Okay.
So those memories, when she surfaced, her memories, what she saw is what I started seeing in my flashbacks.
Okay, so when you say you switch back to your alter ego, right?
Not an alter ego, an alter personality.
Alter personality.
Dissociative identity disorder.
Okay, exactly what transpires when you're in that mode?
So what happens is, do you want to know what happens in a flashback episode, or a dissociative episode, or or do you want to understand the idea of fracturing the mind into a separate personality to handle a trauma?
All 3 of them.
Okay, so basically, when the trauma occurred when I was 3.
Okay, and the trauma is the rape.
The rape, yes. Okay. So when that was occurring, your mind has an amazing way of just dealing with anything in life, and it will find ways to cope with stuff. And so when something so horrifying is happening and you can't cope with it, your mind will fracture somebody into a personality who can. So sometimes it's called a split.
Okay.
Like split personality.
Yes.
It's like that. So you can have one split, 2 personalities, Jekyll and Hyde, or you can have several. Okay. And typically multiple personality is born when someone has repeated trauma in their life. Okay. So every time an unbearable trauma might happen, they might split into another persona to handle that. Mm-hmm. And then that persona is triggered to come out and live the life as you, through you, when something reminds them of that trauma.
Okay.
So as I lived my life, I from what I understood up to a couple of years ago, all I knew of myself was that I was Tamara, but I believed a different history that I've come to understand is not true. That history is the history of the last alter that had been born, Carol.
Okay.
Carol Shea. And then, from there, I had started to put my life together and get healthy with my mental illness and get over my addictions and all of that. And then after I had the kids, being in a healthy, stable place, my mind decided I can handle this now. And all of those memories that were buried under alters memories started to get uncovered like layers of an onion. And the last step was me remembering my early childhood, which was the very first thing that happened, which was my very first fracture. And her name was Karen, and she's 3, and she saw everything that happened to me. And then I saw all of that happen through her eyes when she came out and started to take over in my life when I had my breakdown. I was triggered. What triggered her to come out and share her story is that my daughter looks so much like me. She looks exactly like me. And seeing her certain situations as she started to get to be that age, the flashback started. I'd see her and then I would be there watching as Karen, Tamara being assaulted. And so it would take me out of my, so a disassociative episode would ensue where I would suddenly, me, an adult 30-year-old mother, wife, everything that I see as me would slip away. And the feeling of that is sometimes so, it can be so tangible, like in the room. Like I would experience things like fog. Like my kitchen would get really foggy, like it was full of smoke, and I would actually start looking for something being on fire, or the walls would warp and fold in on me, or I would feel like really, really, really tall over my counter. Like things would just be almost unreal, like a dream state. The world around me would become unreal, and then I would start to feel like I was disappearing or falling away, or my consciousness that I relate to this persona, this person, would start to divide. I would feel that breaking happening, and it would just get dark, and then it would be a blackout, and during that blackout my alter would be living my life. So during that blackout period, I was 3 years old, my name was Karen, and I was witnessing this happening, or it was her memory of that happening, and that was her coming through and me being pulled under, and then I would be her. So if I was triggered and couldn't handle the memory as myself, like Tamara sitting there having this memory through Karen's eyes, if that was too intense, I would have that disassociative episode slip away, and then Karen would be in my body. I would be hanging out with my kids. Do you want to play blah, blah, blah? And then I'd come back, and my daughter says to me, this is when I first realized that this was happening, or that I had this alter, was that my daughter, I was feeding them at the table. And she says to me, Mommy, when can Karen come back out and play? And I said, honey, who's Karen? And she goes, well, she's you, Mommy, but she's 3 like me. And I realized, holy shit. Because I knew about Karen, but what I thought was that Karen, that I was born Karen, and that after the episode that triggered another personality to be born, Carol Shea, after that, Karen was buried under Carol, and what Carol decided Karen's history is that I was born as Karen, and I had to change my name to get away from this person who had put me in the situation to cause Carol to. Does that make any sense? It's hard to explain.
It does make sense.
So I rewrote Karen's history as Carol, and after I dealt with Carol and integrated that personality into my life by dealing with the trauma related to that, then Karen was able to come out, and I discovered that I had actually made up a false history for my life, and I uncovered the truth about who I really am.
And the false history was
Karen's history.
Karen's history.
Yeah.
So when these episodes
it was Carol's idea of Karen's history. It was Carol's take on it, because she buried Karen, because now Karen, being 3, wasn't strong enough to deal with what Carol dealt with. Carol was a sex slave.
Carol was a sex slave.
Yeah. She got into the sex trade industry with some really bad people and was held captive, and it was during the captivity that I fractured.
Now was Carol, the sex slave,
Yes.
Was Carol?
Well, Carol was born to handle what happened to me in that situation. And Carol is, promiscuous and sexual, and she's a dominatrix and a prostitute, and all of that. Carol was the personality, the sex kitten personality that's able to handle such dark things.
Okay. So as you were living out the persona of Carol, were you actually acting out what Carol's persona was?
Well, because she is my personality.
Okay.
So she was not a sex slave. She was the personality that came out in order to handle the trauma of sexual slavery. It was, Karen wasn't able to come out in that situation to help me because Karen was 3 and that was as a baby, a little kid. So Carol was born then, and Carol is an adult, well, older at the time, 16, 17, and she's like, that personality is very sexual. It's a sex addict. That personality is a sex addict and into like very dark S&M stuff.
So that was physically carried out by
like you become that person. Well. It's like being several people inside of one body.
Okay.
And each person has their turn to take over and live in the body and do what they want to do inside of the body and inside of the life, and they're triggered by different things that make them come out or go back in. Really good reference to help people understand this, because I know it sounds incredibly like it's hard to wrap your mind around. It really is. So something, and it's so funny because I saw it then but I didn't see it. United States of Terra. It was a show that aired on Netflix, and I don't know how to find it. I hope people can, but it deals with the concept of dissociative identity disorder, and it follows a woman in her family life who has about 5 personalities, and they each come out and wreak havoc in her life, and it's how they manage it all. And it really hit home for me, that series, because it perfectly shows you like these personalities, they dress different, they talk different, they think different, they feel different, they live a different life.
But it's actually
you're not aware. But you yourself, your core isn't even aware they exist. Your core self just has missing time during the time that those personalities are living your life.
So do you remember the core self?
I didn't until I integrated. Integration is about remembering. Because when you remember, you can start to deal with the trauma, and the mind, it's like stuck on a loop. That's why. And once you deal with the trauma, you can rewire it around that damage that's caused, and then those personalities integrate. So like, I am not, into S&M or any of that stuff now, but sexually I'm more integrated because I'm not, my core persona had a lot of guilt over sex and all that stuff and couldn't enjoy it. And the integration, my whole self now, I understand like that's a natural thing in my partner, and I've never been happier, and and so it's about, those different aspects, but finding your whole true self and putting it back together through dealing with the pain and the trauma bit by bit, and putting your story together, you can start to figure out who you are and just become one person.
I totally exactly.
And through doing that, I've started to remember and recall the experiences of the alters through their eyes, through flashbacks.
And this is the first time you're able to actually go back.
Yeah, this is the first time in my life I've ever remembered my history. I could not remember anything under the age of about 9. I had maybe 5 memories, and they were very short.
So, how did you trigger the past memories?
My daughter, I think my daughter really turning 3 triggered all of that, and I think that it wasn't a fact of how did I trigger, because triggers have been affecting my life my whole life. That's how alters come out. It was how did I get strong enough that my mind decided I could handle it now? That's the question. How did I get strong enough? And I did that by not doing it alone.
By not doing it alone.
Right. Reaching out, connecting.
Okay. Asking for help.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? It's the mind is so intricate, because the story you're telling me right now, there's a lady that I know of, and real facts, real truth, that in an alter ego, is that how you would alter personality? In her alter personality,
alter persona.
Yes, she's actually an opera singer in her alter personality.
Right.
In her physical frame, she can't hit a note.
That's what I'm talking about.
And the interesting thing is that when she goes into an alter personality,
this woman could hit above 5 octaves, but when she comes back, when like this is physical, like it was, you hear it, you see it.
I know.
When she comes back into her physical self, she can't even hit a note.
Yeah.
So the brain actually really fully morphs into that personality, and it also even gives you the giftings and the ability and the skills of whatever that alter personality
exactly,
is.
because that alter has been developed specifically to deal with that. It is a piece of a mind, so it's able to really focus on those pieces. You know what I mean? It's like, say you have a talent in life, you develop a personality that just is focused solely on that talent, and it's like this. Because you're allowing that brain to fracture into a piece that's really good at it. So it's almost like superhuman abilities for that task.
Yeah.
And that's why I was so good at being whatever. I was the girl that all the bad boys wanted. Because that's the girl I had to be to cope with what happened.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have broken me. And when I was strong enough, I could remember and I could put it together and I could accept it, release it, and rise up.
So, okay, so your husband now, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure he's seen you in several states, right?
Yeah.
How,
I was actually, I should say this, I've never been formally diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. My formal diagnosis is complex PTSD and bipolar. And I have views on that goes into a lot of other stuff that I will get to like another time and that I will talk about in other media sources, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So you know, how did he obviously he helped.
Yeah.
And he obviously he was accepting of it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
So did you ever ask him you know, what he was going through, or how was it difficult for him to understand, or?
I think it was really difficult.
But he understood.
He did. You know, he's lived a full life too. He didn't have the same issues that I have, but he's not been sheltered his whole life. You know, he was a 90s kid too. When we met, he was promoting underground like parties, raves, stuff like that, right? So like he's been, you know, he's heard other people's stories, you know, and he's a very sensitive and loving individual and very strong individual. And so, I don't know, but you know, the night that we met, there was an energy and a connection. And 3 days later, we made love. And he said, "Can I keep you?" And I said, "Yeah." And I meant it. And we didn't spend a day apart for the next full entire year. We were just always together. And so that's been reflected in our relationship. We've been through really tough things, and it's been tough in different ways, and he's supported me in amazing ways through amazing things. But I've supported him too. He's had his own struggles, different than mine, but he's had his own. And we've always been there, but I think at the core of it, there's always been an intense energy, love, and connection and passion, and we have always seen a future together, and we saw it very early on, and that's how we managed to come from where we were in life to where we are now. That's how I managed to start walking in the shoes of who I wanted to be and how I wanted to live my life and get to a place that I was strong and stable enough to deal with things. And he was there through it all, but you know, I was there through it with him too. I think he struggles with depression and anxiety, and so I think when you also struggle with these things, it's easier to relate, so you have more patience.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely, because you've been to the dark side, and
exactly.
somebody's telling you about it, you know exactly what you know they're talking about, so you're a lot more sympathetic.
Yeah, he was incredible. Actually, we hadn't been together too long. We were in my apartment, and I was having an episode, and what I thought were psychotic bipolar episodes, hallucinations, I think those were triggers and flashbacks. I'm realizing now as I've integrated. But I was having a hallucination. We were in my apartment, and I saw a man, dark shadow man. As I integrated, the shadow people that I used to hallucinate became people. I started to have those memories, and I could see who these shadows were. Do you know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yes.
So the shadow person is coming at me under my door of my apartment. He's coming into my apartment, and I know he is, and I'm freaking out and I'm screaming at Matt, and I've got like a big knife, and I'm yelling at him going like, why aren't you doing anything about this? He's going to come in and he's going to get me, and you're just sitting there like you don't care, and like, what is wrong with you, you know? And he actually got up, and I don't even remember exactly what he did, but some kind of, you know, hocus pocus, look, I'm spraying monster spray, something how you would handle a child who's afraid of a monster under the bed. And then he sat with me and he said, you know, I'm not saying that I don't believe you, I'm just saying that I believe that how we see our lives and how we perceive our reality, it's like you're tuned into a certain radio station, and I think that you're just tuned into a different station right now. So I can't see what you're seeing, but I believe that you see it.
Oh, okay.
You know, and that's how he handled me.
I think that's amazing because, you know, it's not about if it makes sense to you.
Yeah.
It's about just believing the individual, right?
Yeah.
And acting as if, you know,
what do you need, instead of this is how I'm going to fix you and this is what you need to
Absolutely.
do. Don't tell people what they got to do. Just hold space.
Or, you know, I guess the worst thing is that what you're seeing doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's really hard because it just it pushes you further away into that lonely, you know, closed off space that nobody understands you, you know? Like it's I think that when you're struggling with mental illness and mental health and, you know, depression and anxiety and all of that, like any